Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking and great to have you along for a special edition of, we normally do our classic fights in this spot, but this week we've got something a little bit different for you, hence the different graphics we're using there. It's more of an infamous fight, this one, and really wanted to, if you haven't seen this fight, really bring it to light and get a little bit more attention on it. And who better to do it with than my co-hosts who know all about it. It's the Grant Tassie Brown and Mike Altamura. How are we, guys?
Most people don't know shit about boxing. They don't know shit.
I'm looking forward to talking about this fight. It's actually one that I've spoken to the different people that were involved behind the scenes of the event.
Beautiful.
And you always hear different narratives from everyone's perspective. So it's an interesting one to go back and look at and reflect upon.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's not the usual classic fight that we do. I've taken all the graphics off this one because I really want to do a standalone one, and who knows, we might do a few more like this as we go with a little bit different circumstances. But the fight I'm referring to is the fight that took place on June 16th, 1983 at Madison Square Garden in New York, USA. It was billed as Assault in the Ring afterwards. It was Billy Collins and Jr. versus Luis Resto. It actually took place on the undercard of the Roberto Duran Davey Moore card back in the day. And just before I let Mike come in and have a comment about the whole thing, a bit of the overview is that Billy Collins was an undefeated young fighter, 14-0, 11 KOs, signed with Bob Arum with Top Rank. This was his big first fight on sort of the big stage. Luis Resto was a journeyman. I think it was 20 wins, 8 losses or something like that. Mike, you can back me up on that. You know, upsets obviously happen on cards. No one was really, stressed that Luis Resto actually got the win. They were very surprised in the manner that he got his win because he wasn't really known as a big puncher, but really battered Billy Collins for the whole fight. After the fight, Luis Resto got the unanimous decision in the corner. Billy Collins' dad has shaken his hand in the corner, as we do in every single fight, and noticed there was a fair bit of padding missing from the gloves. Hence, all hell broke loose. Everyone got involved, and then we'll go through the aftermath and all that. So, Mike, I think I've got it right there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let you fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Just something quickly, though. Sorry to butt in. I'm mistaken. I have seen this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we know you've seen it, mate.
There was a documentary on it. I watched it. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and if you haven't seen it, we'll put the link in in our description anyway if you haven't seen it. But Mike, fill in the gaps there, mate. Have I sort of got it right there?
Yeah, so Collins was Irish Billy Collins was a prospect out of Tennessee, and despite the records, I mean, Collins was 14-0 going into the bout. Resto was 20 wins, 8 losses, and 2 draws. But although Collins was the betting favourite and so arguably the crowd favourite, even though it was in New York, which essentially is the Puerto Rican Resto's backyard, Collins was the hometown fighter. He was a promoter's fighter. But it was a big step up. Like, if you look at his level of competition, he hadn't fought a real solid veteran like Resto, and Resto was going through a hot period in his career. So he'd won 5 of his 6 previous bouts. His previous 2 bouts were for something called the ESPN welterweight titles. So in the early 80s, the network had their own championship. It was considered like something like a regional or national title, but all the opposition was pretty solid. So you'd fight guys that were, say, top 15 to top 40 in the world, those kind of guys. So like the previous couple fights, these aren't guys that, would set the world on fire, but Resto beat Robert Sawyer, he beat Sammy Horn, who were both fringe contender type guys, and was running hot coming into this bout. Like I said, I mean, 20 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, but a little bit deceiving. He was a good technical fighter. He had sparred hundreds of rounds with Roberto Duran, sparred a lot with Vito Antuofermo, a lot of the top tier fighters in the New York scene, Mike McCallum amongst them as well. And this was going to be a test of Collins' resolve. And I mean, if you look at the technical base of the fighters, I'd say arguably what's, I guess, to an extent heartbreaking, but it's just a reality because you don't know how many fights essentially Resto and Panama Lewis were cheating, removing padding, wearing plaster of Paris wraps and so forth. You don't know how long that was. Maybe it was just till they got caught. Maybe this was the first time, maybe this was the 10th time, who knows. But when you look at the technical base of both fighters, I think that there's an argument that Luis Resto would have defeated Collins regardless. And I think that that's really the shame of the situation, that what should have been the biggest night of his career turned out to be the most shameful. And what was essentially supposed to be a coming out party for Collins really is what sent him on the trajectory of depression, and then his demise in a car accident the following year at just age 22. Just a very sad fight and sad situation.
Well, that was suicide, wasn't it, Mike?
Not necessarily, but they say that the depression and the after effects of the fight are what led to the excess drinking and drugs, which led to the car accident.
Yeah, we'll get the fight going there, but yeah, Tassie, just on that, yeah, like he did, the accident that he had that took his life a year or so later, he was, and there's a little bit of footage I'll put up later on, but it was pretty much, it was a car crash, he was drunk, and he went into a river or a ditch or something, so there are, you know, I think his family and friends maybe believe that, you know, he did it deliberately, but there's no real proof to say it was obviously suicide, but,
yeah,
you know, we don't know, but you know, it did say, Taz, you can see here, I mean, Luis Resto was not known as a puncher or more of a body puncher of anything, but you can see there he's really loading up, and I think afterwards came out, and obviously he's got Panama Lewis in his corner, he's not unknown to controversy, but to think they took an ounce of padding out of each glove and soaked his hands in plaster of Paris, no wonder, you know, it's probably a surprise that Billy Collins lasted the whole distance.
Yeah, look, it was, you know, criminal, which is what it was, and we go back to the Aguayo and Pryor fight with Panama Lewis with something in the bottle that he mixed. I mean, you know, what was that? So he's known for being a cheat, Panama Lewis, even though that wasn't provable prior. But yeah, look, this is sad because, I mean, look, like Mike said, look, the guy might have won it anyway, but the fact that he's fought this young up-and-coming prospect who, you know, with top-ranked Irish, like a real, you know, like an apple pie American, you know, with a massive following. They'll, you know, he was really meant to go along and probably one day be a world champion. So to lose in this manner to a journeyman and to do it illegally, or to lose because this guy and his trainer cheated with the you know the plaster of Paris, you know, this led to his downfall in life in general. And with the documentary I watched,
yeah,
really went into depth about his decline and his whole family. I mean, were torn apart from it, and then obviously later on having that car accident, which, you know, obviously probably wouldn't have happened. Like, obviously, you know, he probably wouldn't have been, you know, drunk and all that. But I mean, yeah, look, it's just this was what it was. It was an assault. It wasn't boxing, because boxers fight with padded gloves. And I mean, yeah, it's really, really wrong, mate. Really, really wrong. I believe that they both were banned. Mike can elaborate, obviously, but that Panama Lewis is just an arsehole, a germ of a person.
Yeah, we've certainly got his, that's for sure. I think Mike, from memory, he's actually still training with fighters down. I think he lives in Florida at the moment. He still trains with fighters, but obviously he's not allowed in the ring or have anything to do with them or anything like that. But I think the thing is that got me, Mike, was that the domino effect it had on so many people's lives. Now, I know that Panama Lewis, like you said, Tassie, he's a grub and it's not the first time. And I think Luis Resto actually said in the interviews after this that it wasn't the first time that it happened. So you just got to think how many times it had happened with other fighters. I'm not necessarily sure with Luis Resto, who knows. But the domino effect that it had, obviously we know what happened to Billy Collins, but also his family, his friends, but also not just that. Luis Resto and Panama Lewis both went to prison after this fight. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Luis Resto only served a year, and I think Panama Lewis might have served 2 or 3, but pretty much Luis Resto, I think Panama Lewis moved on with a okay conscience, but Luis Resto to this day is a bit of a shell of a man himself.
Yeah, so he's actually, in recent years, he's been working as an assistant at the gym of former world champ Aaron Superman Davis and putting in time into training young kids, but irrespective of how he goes on the written side of the New York State examination, both for amateurs and pros, he just can't secure a license given his involvement in such a shameful act in boxing history. And I think that it has taken a deep burden on him. I'm not going to say that that's not justified or that he shouldn't have been outcast from the sport, because, what price do you put on the damage inflicted to Billy Collins and then the misery that it caused all those around him? Not just that, in respect to bringing the sport of boxing into disrepute, things like this are what continue to send it down the ladder, which has a flow-on effect to really damage everybody. I do think that Panama Lewis, like you said, was able to move on a little better, clear conscience. If anyone's watched Assault in the Ring, they'll see that to this day he kept denying it. From memory, Panama passed away. Was it earlier this year or late last year?
Oh, was it? Okay, I didn't know.
From memory, he passed away. But
yeah.
I had spoken to him quite a few years back. This is when he was working with Sultan Ibragimov. So he was actually doing work with Tyson and also with Ibragimov, but he just couldn't work the corner, obviously.
Yeah.
Because nowhere would license him. And I'll say this about him. I do think that in this world with most people, that there's not shades of black and white. I think that there's a lot of shades of grey. And Panama Lewis was a fantastic teacher and a very, very sharp boxing brain. And I think that that's probably, even say 8-9 years back when I was speaking to him, he knew his stuff. He knew how to train different fighters. He knew the impact that, say, a welterweight could be subjected to comparative to a heavyweight. He knew tactics as well as anybody. He knew how to shut down fighters defensively on the inside, where to place your head, things like that. And that to me is the greatest shame, because if somebody didn't know and their only resort was cheating, then you can kind of, I'm not going to say justify it, but you can see that was their only way to excel in life. Whereas Panama Lewis was a terrific trainer with great knowledge and great understanding of the sport, and yet he still chose to cheat. He still chose to direct his fighters in that way. So, his legacy should be torched the way it has been.
It has, Tasey. Before I let you comment, we've obviously gone through the fight itself you just saw then, which, as I said at the start, even though it was a surprise that Resto had won, I mean, upsets happen all the time and everything else, but it was what happened after the final bell. And let's look at a little bit of the controversy that followed the final bell.
On the Judas kiss, as he's turning away, you can see Billy Ray's father's hand.
I don't think Billy Collins Sr., from what he told me, even thought that there might have been something wrong with the gloves until the very end of the fight. Otherwise, he would have pointed it out. It was at the end of the fight, when Resto went over to congratulate him, that he grabbed onto the gloves and held on. And he started screaming for the inspectors, "These gloves, these gloves."
What's fascinating is to look at who Luis Resto looks at. Not looking down surprised at the gloves or wondering what's going on or looking at Collins and saying, "What are you talking about?" But immediately turning to his co-conspirator and waving him over. Panama just jumps in and starts yelling, "Those are the gloves you gave us. Those are the gloves you gave us."
The glove they gave us. The glove they gave us. The glove they gave us.
They didn't want to take him off. They wanted to go out, and I said, "No, take him off. Take him off the glove. I want to see those gloves. I got a complaint here. I want to see those gloves." When I saw the gloves and I handed it to it, I knew there was something wrong with the gloves. There's something missing.
So that's where all hell broke loose. And Tassie, I think after that, obviously there was all the preliminary, all the hearings and all that sort of stuff. But it says a lot, though, doesn't it, when the fighter doesn't even, doesn't look down and look surprised. He looks straight at his corner and says, "Oh shit, you better get over here. We've got a problem."
He came clean, the fighter, didn't he?
I think after Mike, did he come clean after that? I think he denied it for a little bit, though, didn't he?
He denied it for almost 20 years. It was only when they shot the documentary that he finally admitted that he was complicit in what transpired that night, and then evolved by saying that his hands had also been covered with plaster of Paris, which, again, when wet, creates like a hardened near brick-like cast material as well. So imagine plaster of Paris under the hands with 1 ounce removed from each glove too.
So do you reckon it's interesting? I had Tony Perez on there, who was the referee. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it was the amateurs not so much, or maybe it's the pros, where the referee actually comes over and obviously makes sure you've got your mouth guard, but actually grabs the gloves. Am I wrong there? Is he complicit a little bit as well, that he didn't actually pick it up before he brought him to centre ring? Tassie?
Oh, I don't know. I know the amateurs do that or whatever, but do they all do it? I mean,
Yeah, look, maybe not.
do they always? I don't know. Do they always hit the? I mean, they come over and they go. Well, I remember in the amateurs they used to do this and they tap your box as well. Actually, the groin guard, they go bang bang, but
I just remember having to hold the gloves out. That's all, and I would feel the gloves, but
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Mike, is that the case in the pros? Am I wrong? As I said, I know it's definitely used to be in the amateurs anyway. Is it in the pros or not?
A good referee does all his own cross-checks and doesn't assume that others in the operation have taken care of those duties. But in a state where you've got inspectors that are generally, you would assume, are with the athlete in the dressing room all the way to the ring walk, you would figure that there wouldn't be any opportunity to tamper with the gloves. So that's perhaps the assumption that was made.
That's my next question, because if you've got to cut the gloves open, and I didn't actually put it on there, but it was a part of the documentary where they show the gloves where they've been cut, to actually cut the gloves, take the padding out. I'm not sure whether they sewed it back up or not. I'm assuming not. I'm assuming they wouldn't have had a needle and thread, as I just go out of focus there. But also the hands and the plaster. Now, I'm assuming there was no one in these days where the opposition's in the corner, in the room, watching you get taped and everything else until they put the gloves on. But how did this possibly happen? And obviously, Panama Luis and Luis Resto are 100% at fault, but surely there's got to be a few please explains, a few of the officials that were involved.
Yeah, I think that you've also got to look at the era. I mean, 1983 was
40 years ago.
A little bit more of a trusting era. You'd know now, like, I can give you an example in New York State because we had TJ Donnie's world title fight there a few years back. I wasn't even permitted to stand from my chair in the corner in between rounds. Like, you literally need to be sitting 4 feet from the ring. You can't move from your seat. You're watched every which way. Yeah. Your bags are inspected. When you step into the dressing room, if you've got even a Fanta or a bottle of Coke or something in your bag, it's confiscated. You're only permitted sealed water to actually enter the dressing room. You've got an inspector with you at all times, and then there's a secondary inspector in what you'd call like the ring channel, to walk to the ring and the corridor, so to speak. So nowadays, a crime of this nature would be absolutely impossible unless the commission was complicit in it. But I think it was just 40 years ago, it was much more of a lax era.
Yeah, you're right. I was just going to say, Tassie, that I remember being over there with Shannon O'Connell in Canada, and we took young Gage Island to fight in Vegas. I remember the time when you first walk in there, they allocate. It's a bit different to Australia. I know they've probably got a lot more members over there, but over there, they delegate one person to you, and they do not leave your side the whole time, from when you get there to when you leave at night. So, obviously, as Mike said, 40 years is a long time, lots happen, but it's hard to believe that they were able to cut the gloves, take it out, soak the hands in the plaster, and get away with it, isn't it? It's just crazy to think about it.
It is crazy, mate. Yeah, no, I hear they're very strict in the commission, especially in America. A few people that have, had fighters fight in Vegas and LA, New York. You can only have so many people backstage, and someone from the commission is there, full time. So yeah.
All right, well, before we finish up with it all, guys, I'm going to just play obviously, like you said earlier, Mike, it had a tragic ending. Billy Collins was killed in a car crash. This is a little bit short explanation of what happened to Billy after the events.
In the early morning hours of March 7th, 1984, estranged from his wife and infant daughter, Billy Collins Jr.'s downward spiral came to a tragic end.
He was depressed of hearing that he would never fight again.
Billy and the guy from next door, a guy named Johnny Duke, come in, and I could tell, Billy was a little drunk.
There was a bar not far from the house where you could shoot pool, and he wanted us to go. We chose not to go, and he left mad.
After they left, of course, Billy beat the crap out of Johnny and got the keys from him. And he told me that Billy looked at him and said that I'm just going to kill you, or I'm just going to kill us, or something.
It's like everything was taken that night in the ring.
Irish Billy Collins.
Yeah, it's just a tragic story, Mike. There's obviously no winners in the whole thing, but you touched on it before about in the aftermath of it. Obviously, as we said, both Panama Lewis and Luis Resto both went to prison. I think, as I said, Luis Resto, I'm pretty sure only served 1 year, and Panama Lewis might have been 2 or 3, I think. But you said before that Luis Resto in that time, and we're talking nearly 40 years ago, has applied to become a second or be able to work corners or do something, and each time he's been denied by the New York State Athletic Commission. Do you think in this day and age, when you admit that you've done something wrong and served your penance, that an opportunity should be there to actually re-enter? Because he's a shell of a man of what he was as well. Not obviously forgiving what he did, but do you think it's time to not forgive, but to give him a chance and give him an opportunity to get that license, to at least be a second, not the chief second maybe, but maybe part of another coaching team?
I think that, with certain exceptions, I think most people deserve a chance at redemption in life. People can make temporary mistakes. I think that what's hard to marry up in this situation is that there's a lengthy thought process that's gone into what's been conducted. And if you look at what transpired, like I said, it goes against the very fabric of what the nature of sport is. I could see someone bouncing back easier from a fight-fixing scandal or something of that nature. But when it's something like this, that the very fabric of the sport is that you're going to present an open and honest contest, which means you don't manipulate your wraps, you don't manipulate your gloves, you don't manipulate what is used in the corner, whether to stop a cut or, with liniment getting on the gloves or whatever that could blind an opponent. And I think that when you see what's supposed to make the sport tick compromised to that extent, and it brings the sport in such a period of disrepute. And keep in mind, our sport already, like Bert Sugar said thousands of times, boxing ran out of black eyes in the 1800s. So every time something like this happens, it further sinks the sport. And I believe that Luis Resto in life deserves a chance at redemption. But I think from a boxing perspective, he doesn't deserve a chance because it's a privilege and it's an honor to be part of the sport. It's not a right. And if you blow your right by committing assault, then you should serve the time. If his time's a life sentence, then it is what it is.
What do you think, Tassie?
Yeah, I disagree. I think he's paid his time. I mean, Margarito fought again after he fought big money fight against Pacquiao, and he got done with tampered bandages. Probably not as bad. And in life, priests can touch kids and then go to work at another church. So if things like that can happen, I think a bloke after 40 years, not after 10 years, but 40 years, I think. And I'm all for the rules, Mike, but I'm welcome for him to come back to boxing with strict regulations, obviously. But I think he's paid his dues. But it's like anyone. It's like going to jail. You pay your dues. Sometimes people get let out. They shouldn't be let out. But plenty of people get away with a lot of shit in life, and I'd accept him back. Given it's been so long, 40 years is a long time. So yeah, I'll give him the thumbs up.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough one either way. I can sort of see both views.
I can see both views too, 100%.
Like 100%. You are right, Mike, that it's not betting scandal or something like this. Is something that's had some pretty dramatic results or consequences, and it's a tough one. But then with you, Tassie, I agree. Hey, 40 years is a long time, especially with. You said Margarita. I mean, the only difference with that, of course, is I think it was found before the fight. So that was a bit different.
It got big money, the fight Pacquiao.
Yeah, well, it was before the Mosley fight, obviously, what happened. But it was before the fight, not after the fight. So that might have been a bit... Still the same intent, so it's an interesting one. But either way, look, as I said earlier, there's obviously no winners.
Did Margarita do it against Cotto? That's what everyone... we'll never know. And it looks like the way the fight played out that he... probably did, because Cotto said he'd never been, hurt by that. And Margarito's a great fighter, but what do you think, Mike? Just your hunch.
Yeah, Mike. Yep.
Cotto.
What's your gut feel?
My gut feel is that they probably were loaded. I think that just because someone gets caught doesn't mean that that's the first time they've endeavored to take that way into battle. So the thing is, and I'll say with Margarito, and it's not excusing any of his behavior or conduct or associations, but there was enough reasonable doubt in his case that maybe it was more on the trainer and it was on Capatio, the trainer, and that he hadn't partaken in it because he wasn't caught in battle. If he was caught coming out of battle with loaded wraps, undoubtedly he would have had a life sentence handed to him, lifetime suspension.
Going into battle?
The intent's not different, but because he never carried out the crime, it's like you gotta look at, someone could commit armed robbery or they could have the thought of committing armed robbery. I think that's the difference, arguably, and that's what gives a bit of grey area on Margarito's side. I don't think it was correct that Margarito was permitted to come back and make the paydays he did. But it's because of that little glimmer of doubt that he was allowed to resume his career.
I think, just on the Cotto thing, I think it's pretty obvious. Just looking at the way Cotto was beaten down and the way he looked afterwards, it looks eerily like Billy Collins, if you ask me.
Yeah.
The way the punches were having such an effect. And Margarito's a solid puncher, but he's not a massive puncher, so...
He's a volume puncher, yeah.
Yeah, so, look, I suppose we'll never know, but I think the thing is...
Have you seen the face-off between Margarito and Cotto before their rematch, when they're talking?
Yeah.
Max Kellerman, and he shows a picture of this, like, the rap, it shouldn't look like that, the rap. It was like, Margarito's like, arrogant, going, that's nothing.
Shrugged it off.
Cotto's like, look at this, like. And Cotto had tears of blood. Like, he was literally beaten down. I mean, Cotto could get dropped in fights and hurt. We'd seen Cotto get hurt before, but to be beaten down, and that was Margarito's biggest win. Like, that was...
It was just...
Yeah, I reckon...
Just the manner and the way that fight went down, it just smells like this fight, I suppose. But anyway, we'll never know. But, guys, that was the assault in the ring, the Billy Collins Jr., Luis Resto story. I will put the link in the description of this video on YouTube, so make sure you check it out. There's a really good, there's plenty of videos and that on there about it anyway, but make sure you watch the fight. It's a fascinating story and probably the darkest chapter in this sport, I think, that has been found anyway. I'm sure there's lots of things that have never been found, but I think what happened in this one, what transpired, is definitely a dark day in the history of boxing. So thanks again, guys. Really wrapped to get your feedback and your input. And as I said, if you haven't seen the fight, make sure you check it out. Until next week, we'll see you then.